Hi, my name is Jenny Tollison, and I'm going to present my supervisory model. I have separated my model into two parts, the what, and then in the next slide we'll get to the how. The what is the program components, basically. What do you want the supervisee to know by the end of your time together? So if your time together is a year or 2 years or however long you are spending, what would you like for them to know? And I took this mostly from the staff training assignment that we had, where we talked about, or it included our mission vision, our program goals, the policies and procedures, the professional counseling model, and general job duties. And most of these are straightforward. The professional counseling model includes the counseling department within the school's general approach to counseling, but it also includes the personal preferences of the counselor. For example, I prefer CBT and reality therapy type theory and techniques and that sort of thing. So part of the responsibility for the supervisor would be helping the supervisee hammer down those ideas during this process. The how is going to come from Henderson's ORS and categories of professional matrix. That's going to be the roadmap. It's going to be the show us how and the direction that we're going to get to the outcome that we want. So it's a roadmap, and to get there we need a vehicle, and that vehicle is going to be cognitive behavior therapy. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about these various components in my presentation. ORS is an acronym that stands for observation, assess, respond, and steps. And the observation phase looks at supervisee behavior in terms of motivation and competence. And those are two concepts that I want to talk about from the start. So since we are measuring the level of motivation and competence, that's something that should be communicated up front to the supervisee. So when I am observing, the supervisee would know that I'm looking for those things. I would communicate up front what I hope to see when we're in those situations. And so I can observe directly. I can ask questions of the supervisee, how he or she thinks that their work is progressing to get the information I need. With that information, I will then assess where they are. So the behavior the supervisor observes is measured against the standards that are determined. So those standards are communicated up front, like I said, with the motivation and competence. Those are two things I'm looking for. So what are the other standards? Part of that is going to be the program components. I'm looking for the supervisee to understand how we do things in this department and what the school is all about. But it's also the counseling standards, like counseling ethics and components of the ASCA model, standards that are set by counseling, governing agencies and bodies. And then making sure that those standards are communicated at the start of the supervisory relationship. It would be unfair to assess standards that were never communicated. So I think to get optimal results, we would need to make sure to communicate that up front. The R, respond, is going to happen by way of the therapeutic alliance, and this is where the supervisor helps the supervisee understand what he or she needs to improve, and this therapeutic alliance is so important to make that happen. If trust exists in the relationship, the supervisee would be more apt to take feedback and to show more growth and professional development during the time together. And then that leads right into the steps where you create an action plan, and the supervisee would work together with the supervisor to come up with steps to show, to improve whatever goal that you would work on. Here I wanted to use a graphic to show the categories of the professionalism matrix. And here you see 4 quadrants, and it uses the terms competence and commitment, and we are using the terms competence and motivation. So I wasn't as clear on why we're changing the words, but I think commitment and motivation are similar, so I'm thinking of it in that way. When we talk about high commitment or low commitment, I'm thinking high motivation or low motivation. So quadrant 1 is for star workers, and they're high in both areas. Quadrant 2 is the unfocused worker, and that's low competence and high commitment or motivation. And quadrant 3 is the impaired workers, which is low in both areas. And then quadrant 4 is the disengaged worker, which is high in competence and low in commitment. And as you can see in the diagram, those arrows show the line extending out to eternity. So basically, you start low and then you go high, but the high never gets to a stopping point. So even if you end up in the first quadrant, which is the star worker, you're high in both areas, you're in a good place, but you still have room to grow. And that was one of the things I really liked about this approach. If you're in one of the low categories, you're still going to be moving forward. And so you can be high or low, but you always have room to grow and move forward. And we use the ORS model and components of CBT, which I'll talk about in just a second, to assess and place a supervisee in one of these quadrants. And there's many questions that we could go through, but if we have followed that roadmap with the ORS model, then it's going to be clear at the end of that where the client or where the supervisee is placed. And then our vehicle, I have briefly talked about these, the ones that overlap with the ORS model in general, but these are just a few of the cognitive behavior therapy techniques that we can incorporate into these processes and concepts from Henderson. So the therapeutic alliance I talked about, the agenda and action plans. Okay, so the action plan in CBT is the same thing as the S in ORS. It's the steps. This is what we're working toward to make an action plan for improvement. And the agenda is important because when I meet with a supervisee, I want to be able to have an order to our meeting, and this agenda helps to do that. Socratic questioning is something that's used throughout, and definitely in the observation stage, when I would be asking the supervisee, what did you do well? What did you think about it? If you could redo something, what would you do differently? What led to that decision? How have you responded similarly in the past, and how did that work out for you? Those are all really good questions to guide the conversation and to work toward improvement. And so really in any stage, but definitely in the observation stage, this type of questioning is helpful. And then also in the observation stage, video conferencing is important. Video conferencing allows the supervisee to record his or her work and then come back with, present that to the supervisor, and then they come together to talk about it. And so this just gives an important frame of reference for growth and can be very helpful to the overall growth and learning of the supervisee. So that is all I have for you. There's my references, and I hope you guys, have a great rest of your summer. I think this will be the last time we talk until the next classes start. So take care, and I will talk to you soon.